You may well remember that over the course of the year, having set a plan at the start of the year, we slowly whittled it away and finally agreed that actually the Internal Audit Service was not going to do its normal plan of work. So at this point, I'm in a slightly interesting position with my end of year report, and in particular the opinion that I have to give each year at this point. So I'll say right now, I am giving an opinion, and that opinion is a favourable opinion. I'm giving moderate assurance that the County Council overall is adequately governed, risk managed, and has adequate and effective controls in place to manage its risks. But the evidence that I'm using to support that opinion is somewhat different. As I say, that there isn't a lot of internal audit work behind that. But as a member of the County Council senior leadership team, as someone who has interacted with different directorates across the County Council throughout the year, and actually the auditors have been working, albeit not on audit work, there have been sources of evidence that for this year only, and I think it really is appropriate only to do this for 1 year, I will be taking that wider evidence base rather than strictly an internal audit plan of work to base my opinion on. So really that's the long and short of what this report says. I've set out in the report the context, that overall opinion, and about a page and a half of key observations. I would hope that as members of the County Council, most of that is not news to you. And that should then feed into the annual governance statement. Although this document itself is obviously in the public domain because this is a public meeting, it will feed into the more public annual governance statement. There are some things, though, that this report has to do just professionally. I'm obliged to make a statement on one or two things, and in particular, organisational independence, which is on, I think, page 13 of the pack. And really, that is an odd one again this year, in that the auditors have all been out doing other work across the County Council. So I can't really claim, as usual, that they're free of any other activity, but I think I've explained what the circumstances are around that. And Appendix B to this report sets out what the auditors have actually been doing, and I think that makes a really good read on its own account. I'm really grateful to the audit team for the work they've been doing. But just in terms of things I have to draw your attention to, there is also a quality assurance and improvement programme, and to the extent we have been doing any work at all, both for the County Council and for our external clients, we have nonetheless complied with that quality assurance and improvement programme. So that is about all I feel I need to say, but I'm very happy to take any questions about what I'm reporting here. So back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for that commentary in presenting your report. Yes, I find it very interesting, and certainly I've found Appendix B a good read in showing us those various examples of how the members of your team have been helping in non-audit work on the operational side of the County Council activities during the lengthy period of the pandemic. Any comments or queries from members of the committee? No, in that case, I take it that we're happy to accept the recommendation to note this annual report. So thank you very much again, Ruth. So we now come to item 5. This is again for you, Ruth, of course, the internal audit proposed annual audit plan for the coming financial year that we're now in, 2021-22. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. This is a much more normal looking document, and you will, I hope, recognise some parts of it because it's very heavily based on the work that we would like to have done last year and didn't. Clearly, I and the audit managers have spoken to the various directors across the organisation to think again about what we should be doing over the coming year and where we do need to be giving assurance to this committee and in due course the council. But it basically the report sets out the sort of evidence that I will need in the coming year, recognising that last year was very exceptional. On page 25 of your pack, there's a chart that really sets out the way I view a framework for governance, risk management and control, and the way I think about how I set out my work. And on the following page, page 26, the numbers don't necessarily mean anything, but they will show you the sort of coverage that I'm planning to achieve over the coming year, both in terms of the control categories, governance and oversight, business effectiveness, service delivery, and so on, and split down into directorates, and the type of audit work that we do, whether it's compliance work, consultancy work, or a combination of a full risk and control based audit. Appendix B sets out a sort of list of blow by blow, very briefly, the individual audits we're proposing to do at this stage. But as I've pointed out in the main narrative, that's our intention. It's the plan at this point, but things may well change during the course of the year. There's already be something that might at least give us pause for thought, although I'm not sure it is going to change anything, and that is the publication of the inspector's report into Liverpool City Council, which might cause us just to think again about whether we've got proper coverage over procurement. But that's not necessarily ever been something we'd flag up as having been something to worry about in quite the way that Liverpool have. Nonetheless, it gives us pause for thought, and there may be something else to think about there. So I know I've been very brief there, but this committee has been operating now for 3 or 4 years, so you will have seen a very similar document in previous years, and to some extent even some of the same content last year. So again, I'll pause there and see if anybody has any questions for me. I think I can see at least one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm not sure who the question's coming from. Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor, you've got a hand up, haven't you, on the team system? Thank you. Yes, over to you, Julia.
Thank you. I just want to make an intervention under the page 31, Education and Children's Services, with this reference to child poverty. I don't object, but it just seems a bit strange that we're saying it's about the council's response to perceived increases in child poverty as a consequence of the pandemic. So national child poverty campaign groups have highlighted that in Lancashire, there's only been a 49% take up of the Healthy Start vouchers, and that equates to something like £24,000+ a week of unused vouchers not being taken up by the pregnant mums and children that are entitled to it. And I just think that we just don't mention food, and it's obviously a critical part of the pandemic. There's a lot more take up of residents making the use of food banks, and so it's just that it's in the hands of the county council to promote the food vouchers, and if they could perhaps do an early intervention on that, it would be very, very welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. I recognise that. We're very much auditing what the Directorate is doing around this, but I am aware, having spoken to Edwina Grant, that this is an area that she is very passionate about herself. So yeah, we will certainly be looking at that angle. Thank you for the pointer. Okay.
Okay, are you okay with that, Julia? Any other comments from members of the committee?
Yes, Chairman. John Shedwick.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, Ruth, thank you very much for this report. I mean, plainly, it does get us back to somewhat business as usual. If I could comment just briefly on the previous report, I'm well aware, as you know, that you did do an excellent job for outside clients over the last year, and that was very much appreciated. Yes, business as usual. I think we note these are the intentions. We understand there could be some variations, but as far as I'm concerned, I think you've done a really good job to give us an idea of what you intend to do this financial year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or queries from members of the committee? Okay.
Can I just say, Chairman,
go on, Ed. Yes.
I think the proposal that's made is very sensible, and the way forward is very clear. And I think the way it's been handled through the pandemic has again been excellent. So I'd like to endorse that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And it does strike me, as it will others, that in this, well, not unusual time, because it happens every 4 years, in the next 11 to 12 days or so, and after that, after the county council elections, in fact, on the 6th of May, there may well be different members of this committee. I'm sure there will be. Hopefully, some members will still be on the committee, because it's a good thing for committees like this to have some continuity. But no doubt, when the officers are arranging briefing sessions for county councillors, and particularly for members of this committee in the future, that the example you drew our attention to, Ruth, on page 25, that chart and your comments around it, will figure in such training or reminder training. Okay, thank you. So I take it we're okay to, we're in agreement to approve the audit plan for the coming financial year. Thank you very much. So now we come to our colleagues from Grant Thornton. There's 1 or 2 reports on external audit. So is it yourself, Paul, who's taking us through the agenda item 6 one? Over to you, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I will take you through item 6. So we all recall from the last meeting of the committee that we shared an updated version of our audit findings report. And that reflected the position we're in just prior to finalising the 1920 audit and signing that off, which we did on March the 5th, and the pension fund as well at the same time. And you will recall that the audit was delayed, not because of any sort of mainstream issues, for want of a better description, or completion of basic audit procedures. It was about a one issue thing around valuation of Lobo investments. That was resolved to everyone's satisfaction, I think, and that's why we're able to sign on March the 5th. So the annual audit letter is a statutory requirement which we have to provide to you, and that's a summary version, effectively, of the audit findings report you received at the meeting in January. This is a shorter form of that. It reflects the fact that we gave an unqualified opinion on the accounts with an emphasis of matter on matters related to asset valuations due to the pandemic, and that was a sort of standard thing across the board, all local authorities. And we gave an unqualified value for money conclusion as well, and we've also subsequently certified the WGA, the whole of government accounts requirements as well, which was submitted to the NEO for their processes. So 1920 is now done, subject to, the certificate is not given because of the long-standing Operation Sheridan Police investigation, which goes back obviously until 2013, I think. And so we can't certify the audit closed until that case is resolved. But there's nothing else new in this particular annual audit letter. It's a summary version of what you saw in January. So, Chairman, I'd be happy to take any questions that members have on this document.
Thank you very much, Paul. Do members have any questions on this? No? Okay, so I take it then we're okay to note, as requested of us on the recommendation, to note the annual audit letter for 2019-20 financial year as set out at Appendix A to the report. Thank you. So we now move on to agenda item 7, external audit progress report and sector update for 2020-21.
Thank you, Chairman. I will pick up that item as well. So our progress report reflects the fact that although we only managed to sign off 1920 last month, we're underway with our 2021 planning, and I think that the document reflects the progress we've made on that. So we've made good progress on planning. That has enabled us to produce the audit plan for 2021, which Stuart will pick up as a part of the next item. So this progress report reflects the work we've done so far, the meetings we've had with officers at Lancashire County Council, and also some of the events, training events that we've provided that I believe that County Council staff have attended. We also set out a broad timetable, and then the rest of the document is a sector update, including reports from both Grant Thornton and other bodies, and also reflection on the new value for money approach, which Stuart can pick up in a bit more detail when we go through the audit plan, as well as some recent reports to National Audit Office and others. So happy to take any questions. The one report I'd probably draw your attention to in the pack is the report that we did on lessons to be learnt from recent public interest reports. I would certainly commend that to members, because it does reflect a lot of issues around member conduct at some of those councils, and obviously I think provides some useful lessons. But happy to take any questions on that or anything else in the report, Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. Any comments, queries, observations from the committee? Okay, so I'll take it then that we are happy to note the audit progress report and also the sector updates that have been provided. Thank you. So now we move to agenda item 8, and then there's agenda item 9 after. And firstly, it's the external audit report on the LCC audit plan for 2021. Again, Paul, please, or is it Stuart?
Yes, it's me. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, so this is our external audit plan. And so this document provides an overview of the planned scope and timing of the statutory audit for the council. So the scope of the audit is in accordance with auditing standards and will cover both our opinion on the financial statements, as well as the value for money arrangements in place at the council for securing economy, efficiency and effectiveness in the use of resources. So I intend to talk you through the key aspects of the plan outlined on page 4 of our report, which is 84 in the agenda pack. And this is essentially the audit plan on a single page. So firstly, with regards to the significant risks identified for the audit, so these are the key areas requiring special audit consideration due to their inherent complexity, estimation uncertainty, subjectivity, and the potential for fraud. So for 2021, we've identified the following significant risks. And firstly, we've got management override controls. So under auditing standard ISA 240, there's a non-rebuttable presumption of management override of controls. And so this is included as a standard risk in all audits. So the key areas that this risk relates to are journals, management estimates, and transactions outside of the usual course of business. So secondly, we've got the valuation of land and buildings. And as for previous years, this is included due to the size of the asset portfolio, the fact that it's a significant estimate made by management, and that valuations are sensitive to the assumptions used in the valuation input. So this risk covers both the land and buildings in the council's accounts, as well as the investment property consolidated into the group accounts. Management engaged the internal valuations team to undertake the detailed valuations, and so as part of our planning processes, we have been doing some initial discussions with them to get the dialogue started. Worth noting also that for 2021, there's been an amendment to auditing standard ISA 540, accounting estimates, and there's more detail on this in page 9 and 10 of our report. But part of the amendment is that we need to be satisfied that management can demonstrate that they've challenged the valuer over the assumptions applied, they reasoned for applying particular assumptions, and challenging any unexpected movements once the reports are received. So we sent management an inquiries document, which covers questions over fraud, internal controls, but also covers estimates, and I believe that will be covered by Neil and Khadija in agenda item 11 later on in today's meeting. Next, we've got the valuation of the net pension liability, and this is another risk that you should be familiar with, and is again included due to the size of the liability and the sensitivity of the assumptions involved. And again, management using expert in determining the valuation of the liability. So our approach for this risk includes liaising with the pension fund auditor for them to provide us with assurance over the source data used by the actuary, as well as the controls and operation at the fund. And we also perform our own audit tests to assess the reasonableness of the assumptions applied. And finally, we've got a significant risk over the improper expenditure recognition. So each year we are required to assess the risk of fraud in both income and expenditure under auditing standard ISA 240. So for 2021, we've rebutted the risk of fraud in income due to the limited opportunity to manipulate revenues. However, we've not rebutted the risk for expenditure, and this is mainly due to the current COVID-affected economic environment, creating a completeness risk over the expenditure recorded in the accounts. So in essence, this is the risk that 2021 expenditure is pushed into 21-22. So we'll be performing a number of audit tests to address this risk, such as comparing the accruals estimates in the accounts to the actuals recorded in the prior year for consistency, and also testing invoices received and payments made in April and May to determine if they've been coded to the correct year. So next up, in terms of materiality, so each year we determine the materiality level, which is the threshold above which we deem that any misstatements or omissions could reasonably be expected to influence the decisions of users. So for 2021, we've set our planning materiality at 1.25% of prior year gross expenditure. So this equates to 28.134 million for the group and 28.108 million for the council. So the percentage threshold is unchanged from prior years, but there's been a marginal increase in the actual figures. Also, the level at which we report matters to those charged with governance in our findings report is also slightly increased at 1.4 million. So in terms of value for money, so as you saw in the previous paper, and we've mentioned in previous meetings, that the NAO Code of Practice has been updated for this year. And so we are required to review and assess the arrangements in operation at the council at a more granular level than we have done previously. So over the coming weeks and months, we will be reviewing policies, procedures, strategies that are in place at the council, and having discussions with key officers to understand the arrangements that are in place. We're now also required to report on the arrangements in place in much greater detail, and so our auditor's annual report will also include some additional commentary on the arrangements in place, as well as any findings we might have. So at this stage of our work, we haven't identified any risks of significant weakness, which is obviously a really good starting point. And it's worth noting as well that as part of our understanding and assessment of the arrangements in place for the governance aspect of the value for money work, we aim to cover some of the key areas, such as large capital projects, COVID procurement, areas of that nature. So that's everything that I wanted to highlight, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Stuart, for that comprehensive and, as always, interesting coverage of what you'll be looking at. Has any other members of the committee any comments or clarifications needed from Stuart? Okay, just one thing that you did mention among the many interesting and valid areas, you mentioned about the group in context with the limitations below which you're not looking for the amounts of errors, if I can put it that way. I'm not expressing it very well at the moment, but you mentioned a figure for the LCC itself and a slightly larger figure for the group. In terms of the group, am I right in saying that the only difference between LCC accounts coverage and the group is it just the one company called, is it Lancashire County Developments Limited, LCDL? Is that what then is added in for the group, who I believe have their own auditors?
Yeah, I believe so. So they are consolidated because they hold the investment properties, which is a material balance. I can't remember exactly what the value is, but I think it's marginally over material, maybe 35 million-ish. And so obviously the valuation of those assets, as with the land and buildings, assumptions are applied, and so that is a significant risk area. So part of our audit approach is to write out to the auditors of LCDL, because they will be performing the actual audit work over that balance, and we will be reviewing their work. And we've sent them instructions of the test which we would like them to perform to give us the assurance over the wider group audit.
All right, thank you, Stuart, for that clarification. That's helpful. Okay, if there's no other comments, I think we can safely say that we've noted your audit plan. So we move now to agenda item 9, and this is the corresponding one for the pension fund, which presumably Andy's going to tell us about. And it's interesting from when Stuart mentioned then about the loop that he will naturally do about the pension liability, which is obviously important to get that confirmed as the right figure. And so here we come now to Andy to tell us more about the pension fund accounts audit plan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take a similar approach to Stuart in that I'll focus on talking through the audit plan from the introductions and headlines page on page 112. So for the pension fund, we have 2 significant risks that we will be looking at, and those are the standard risk that Stuart's already talked around, the management override of controls, which is standard to all audits, and for us we'll be focusing on things like journals and the estimates side, where there's more opportunity to influence changes to the accounts. The second significant risk is the valuation of the level 3 investments, which due to their nature, they lack the observable inputs, which makes it difficult to value. So we spend a bit more time challenging those, making sure they're fair and reasonable. On page 113, we've rebutted the presumed risk of fraud in revenue and expenditure recognition. For a pension fund, these there's not really the opportunity, and the size of the transactions going through aren't likely to generate, very unlikely to be material risks for the audit, so we rebutted those ones. On a page 114, we look at give a bit more detail around the significant risks and the work we'll be doing on those. For materiality, we've used the same basis as last year, which was 1% of the net assets. We've updated the calculation based on the net assets of the 28th of February, and that gives a materiality of 92 million for the pension fund, and our trivial level above which we'll report any errors or misstatements has been set to £4.6 million. The pension fund doesn't have things like value for money, so there's not too much more to say. So if there's anybody got any more questions, I'm happy to deal with those.
Thank you very much, Andy. Any member of the committee got any comments? Yes, John Chedwick.
Just to say, with both those reports and yours and the last reports, I think that the committee very much appreciate the way you've explained that, and a clear explanation of your approach for the audit, starting with significant risks. And it's so easy to understand, and thank you for explaining it to us in such a concise manner.
Pleasure.
Okay, so moving on, because we're happy to note that report. We move on now to agenda item 10, which is the Council's annual governance statement for our approval for 2021, the financial year just ended, which will be subject to audit in due course. And also this embodies, as usually this report does at this time, any updates to the LCC Code of Corporate Governance, which for the coming year, which would, I understand, go to the full council. So Paul, can you take us through this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't intend to go through the documents as they're quite lengthy, but similar to last year, the AGS includes a separate section on our response to the pandemic, and that has a separate conclusion. As you said, Chair, the corporate code has been updated in terms of further evidence, and the code will go to full council for approval either the 27th of May or the 15th of July. Also, just to note, this year, the Pension Fund AGS and this document will be brought together as one document in the Statement of Accounts. This is because we administer the fund. So I'm just happy really to take any questions or comments on the documents, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any comments, queries, observations on a part of this report? Okay, in that case, I take it that we're happy to approve the draft annual government statement, AGS for short, for inclusion in the draft statement of accounts for 2020-21, and we're noting recommendation 2 as well, and also recommendation 3, and we are okay with the updated code of governance per recommendation 4 to go on to the full council at either of those 2 meeting dates that Paul has mentioned. Thank you very much. Agenda item 11, response to the information request from the external auditor. Kajida, can you say something about this, please?
Thank you, Chair. So each year the external auditors request responses to a number of questions from the council relating to fraud and its compliance with laws and regulations. Management response has been prepared and is at Appendix A for your agreement. Clearly there are some references to the pandemic in the responses. However, there are some format changes to the requests as well this year. So there's no separate sort of request from the committee itself and the committee chair as in previous years. The questions are all wrapped into this one set. And there's also a specific section in the questions relating to accounting estimates. And this is so that the committee specifically is aware of the nature of the estimates that are included in the statement of accounts and how they have been arrived at, given that they form a significant part of the numbers that are contained in the accounts, some of which Stuart alluded to earlier. There's no specific areas that I feel I need to highlight in the response to bring to your attention, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kajida. Any comments or queries at all from members of the committee on this? No, in that case, I think we can say we agree to that response. Thank you very much. And agenda item 12, usually we do have these matters coming under urgent business, and it may be self-evident from the report, but Josh, would you like to just comment on this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. You may recall meeting on the 25th of January, the meeting went ahead and all members were involved, and the decisions were recorded by the committee, meeting right through to the end. But what happened was that unbeknownst to us at the time, the webcast failed towards the end of the meeting, meaning that those last few items were not on the webcast, so the public couldn't see them. And part of the laws that allow us, the regulations that allow us to hold meetings online over Teams, do require us to broadcast the meetings live unless they are properly in part 2. So what effectively it meant with the webcast not working, it meant that we took those decisions in private session when we shouldn't have. So what we did, just to make sure the decisions were properly made and properly recorded in accordance with the Constitution, is to retake those decisions as matters of urgent business in line with what the committee had already decided. Now, they were important decisions, but they weren't controversial decisions. So the committee had already decided those things. So this was just giving them confirmation and making sure that the kind of the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted to make sure that we were completely compliant with our Constitution and regulations. So that's all those items of urgent business were. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Josh. So I think unless members have got any queries, we can see that because of this further report now, we can show that we have been fully compliant, as Josh has outlined to us. So thank you very much for that. Agenda item 13 is in case there is any further items of urgent business, and there aren't any. So item 14 is the date of next meeting, which is set already as at Monday the 26th of July at 2 p.m. Hopefully, as it says on the paper, at County Hall, Preston, and not still virtual, but fingers crossed. We now come to item 15, which is exclusion of the press and public. So we might need to just pause here while that is the mechanics, so to speak, for that to enable that to be done, because we have a part